called Tina Biswas. I'm a writer and I read PPE at New from 97 to 2000. I'd like to read you a passage from V.S. Naipaul's A House for Mr Biswas. I came across this book when I was just 15. I spotted it on the shelf at a bookshop and it piqued my interest because the title contained my surname. And from here began my love affair with Naipaul's work, and also the desire to be a writer myself. Not only that, but when I approached literary agents with my first book, the woman who ended up being my literary agent at that time picked up my manuscript from the slush pile because she spotted my surname and immediately thought of A House for Mr Biswas, as the agency also represented Naipaul. So this is a very special book to me for reasons beyond its insight, humour and pathos. Mr Biswas slipped from his low eminence as a civil servant and returned to the Sentinel. The car was now his own, but he was getting less than those who had stayed with the paper. He had paid $500 of the debt. Now he could hardly pay the interest. He wanted to sell the car, and an Englishman came to the house one day to look it over. Shammer was exceedingly rude, and the Englishman, finding himself in the centre of a family quarrel, withdrew. Mr Biswas gave in. Shammer had never reproached him for the house, and he had begun to credit her with great powers of judgment. Again and again she said she was not worried, that the debt would settle itself. And though Mr Biswas felt that her words were hollow, he did get comfort from them. But the debt remained. At nights, with a clear view of the sky through the slightly crooked window frames on the top floor, he felt the time flying by, the 5 years shrinking to 4, to 3, bringing disaster closer, devouring his life. In the morning the sun struck through the latticework on the landing and below the bar-room door into his bedroom, and calmness returned. The children would see about the debt. But the debt remained, $4,000, like a buffer at the end of a track, frustrating energy and ambition. Beyond the Sentinel there was nothing. And though he had at first found the newspaper office stimulating, with its urgency, the daily miracle of seeing what he had written in the afternoon transformed into solid print read by thousands the next morning, his enthusiasm, unsupported by ambition, faded. His work became painstaking and laboured. The zest went out of his articles as it had gone out of himself. He grew dull and querulous and ugly. Living had always been a preparation, a waiting. And so the years had passed, and now there was nothing to wait for. As the title suggests, Mr Biswas's lifetime ambition is to have a house of his own, a place where he is the boss, a place where he can be himself without criticism, a place which he believes is befitting of a man of his acumen. And what he ends up with is financial debt and a deep-rooted sense of being unfulfilled. But as anxiety-inducing as this monetary noose is, what has really destroyed him is the gradual emotional strangulation that comes from a lifetime of frustration, of thwarted desires and petty humiliations. A sense, I suppose, of not achieving what he is capable of life denying him what he is due. Of course, I am speaking to an audience for whom Mr Biswas's experience of life, in its entirety, may seem very remote. But I cannot think that there are not moments of dissatisfaction, doubt, and disillusionment in everyone's life, in both work and personal spheres. There certainly have been in mine, a feeling that in this one irreplaceable and impermanent existence, I am not doing the thing which I should be doing, or making the most of myself, or contributing as much to the world as I could. In modern parlance, I suppose this would be classified as not living your best life. But the problem with claiming to be living your best life, or even wanting to, is that it seems to me in many ways a performance, a boast even. We, imperfect creatures with imperfect information, cannot live best lives, only lives that we find fulfilling, and, an old-fashioned word, pleasing. And whilst desire and ambition are the precursor of achievement, they are also capable of killing perspective and contentment, as they did for Mr Biswas. In the same vein, outward calibration has to be tempered by inward appraisal, lest we become caught in a trap of our own making, and find ourselves wanting to chew off our own leg to escape. This is not to say that an appetite for evident material success and achievements perceptible to others is in itself harmful. A need to impress, a need for admiration and approval is a human instinct, and one which leads to progress and cohesion. But if this appetite is allowed to become so voracious that it is all we can think about, me, then life becomes an exhausting campaign. And, like Mr Biswas, we end up so very weary. Then there is no room left in us to enjoy, and genuinely enjoy, the simple pleasures of life. A beautiful sky, singing birds, laughing with friends, enjoying time with our families. Clichés perhaps, but no less true because of that. Right at the end of the book, there is the smallest glimmer of light when Mr Biswas's daughter Savi returns home. A daughter for whom he had not had much time when she was growing up, so focused was he on himself and his own ambitions. It was a letter full of delights. He was enjoying Savi's company. She had learned to drive and they went on little excursions. It was wonderful how intelligent she had grown. He had got a butterfly orchid. The shade was flowering again. Wasn't it strange that a tree which grew so quickly could produce flowers with such a sweet scent? Thank you for listening.